In class last night, we came across a really interesting verse, John 5:37. And what's interesting about it is how the different translations try to nuance the Greek. It's fun to look at, so we'll look at it. Let's just work through it here. And the sending me Father. So, and the Father, the one who sent me, that one. And by the way, I remember in second grade, we used to have this big old poster on the wall with a man with two hats. And the whole point was you don't say the man, he. Well, my second grade teacher didn't know Greek, because when the subject of a sentence is a phrase, at the end of the phrase, you often get some kind of pronoun that repeats it. The man, he. In this case, it's the Father who sent me, that one. So, the Father who sent me has witnessed concerning me. Then here's the phrase I want to look at. Neither voice of him, neither his voice ever have you heard, nor form of him, his form, have you seen. And part of the challenge of this is that neither nor is generally not considered great English style anymore. And so what are you going to do with that? But it's also helpful to do the phrasing on this verse. We'll see what the issue is. So we're going to go ute, that's your conjunction. His voice never have you heard, nor his form have you seen. So I like to indent these utes at a consistent way so we can see the flow of thought. And then I'm going to put tabs over here because I want to make sure the parallelism is really clear. Because what you have is not only a neither nor, but you have parallel verses. You've heard, you've seen. And then the one other thing I wanted to do was to stick this where it's really obvious. Because what's going on in the Greek is that when you have a parallel construction, you will often omit the repetition of a word because you don't really need it. It's assumed. So what we have are these conjunctions, and I'll go ahead and color code them just because it's kind of fun. So neither nor, and then what you have are these parallel verses, and I'm going to highlight them just to kind of, well, because I can. And so here's what you have. Neither his voice ever have you heard, nor his form understood ever have you seen. And again, he could have repeated pulpita here, but he doesn't really need to because the force of the neither nor and the way Greek constructs parallel sentences or parallel phrases, this can be understood as also functioning down here. So the whole point is that they have never ever heard his voice. They have never ever seen his form. Okay? And what's interesting now is to see how different translations handle this. The NASB is pretty much word for word as you would expect. You have neither heard his voice at any time. Okay, so there's their translation of pulpita, nor seen his form. And they're perfectly comfortable saying neither nor. In the Mount's translation, we did it a little differently. We let punctuation carry the force. His voice you have never heard, comma, his form you have never seen. This works best when you read it out loud, doesn't it? His voice you have never heard, his form you have never seen, and is perfectly legitimate, as I said, to repeat the never because you get it in the ute, but we didn't want to say neither nor, so we have the never with the comma punctuation. It carries the same meaning. It's pretty strong rhetorically. The CSB says, you have not heard his voice at any time, and you haven't seen his form. So there's no neither nor here, but they let the flow of the verse carry its meaning. I'm not sure why they did not contract this form when they did contract it here. That's a little different for me. But anyway, in the NIV, it says, you have never heard his voice nor seen his form. So the nor carries the force, so the never over. It's good. NRSV, you have never heard his voice or seen his form. So same construction, but they didn't want to use nor. It's an English stylistic thing. The Net Bible, it's interesting. It says, you people. And why? Well, because the verb is second person plural, but it's not expressed, and they felt it was important to express it. And as they say in their footnote, the word people is not in the Greek text, but is supplied to clarify the following verbs. So it's perfectly legitimate. You people have never heard his voice, nor seen his form at any time. Now, this is really interesting. This is the popete. And in English, when you have a series of phrases and that kind of phrase at the end, the force of it is that it carries over both of them. So what they're saying is that you people have never at any time heard his voice, and you have never at any time seen his form. So by putting it at the end, it does that for you. The NLT says, you have never heard his voice or seen him, and then face to face, which was an interesting interpretation of form. But you can see what they're all doing. They're working with this neither nor. They're trying to make it stylistically strong in English, and they want to keep the force of the ever with both phrases. So it's just a really interesting way to do things, or different ways of doing things in Greek translation.